We're gonna go deep into utilizing Olympic weightlifting and Olympic weightlifting variations for sprinting, and we're gonna start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you want to learn how to be more explosive, become a better athlete, and run faster than your opponents, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you pick up that speed. So when we're talking about sprint-based training, we've really got to take that step back and start to look at that top-down perspective. What is sprinting, right? What is needed in sprinting? What are the elements behind sprinting? Because if these are not defined, we're not really sure if we're going to actually utilize the right movements. And we've got to think about if we're running the 100, the 60, the 200, the 400, even if we're a long jumper, we've got to have some semblance of horizontal force, and we've got to have some semblance of vertical force, depending upon different points in that sprint. So if we're running at top end speed, we've got to have a tremendous amount of that vertical force. That means we've got to have very effective control over our trunk. We have to have dynamic trunk control, and that's a pivotal element behind running fast, behind sprinting at top end speed with those maximal mechanics. So right off the bat, we know horizontal and vertical force go into running fast. We also know that when we're coming out of the blocks, we can put these two together. When we're coming out of the blocks, we're in a very steep shin angle. We have our shin angle at a very steep angle, right? We need to drive forward. And we can think about some athletes like Maurice Green, who's gonna come out at a very, very steep angle, almost too steep relative to other opponents. We can think about someone like Justin Gatlin, who has tremendous technique out of the blocks. Same with even Asafa Powell. These are guys that come out of the blocks very, very effectively. If we're thinking about top end female sprinters, they don't develop as much power as rapidly as their male counterparts. But if we can focus on improving with a rapid rate of coordination and developing that power out of the blocks for our female sprinters, now they too will have a better angle when they're coming out of the blocks. They'll be closer to that 44, 45, 46 degrees to really get good acceleration down the track. And that's really, really important, is that if we have that rapid rate of coordination right out of the blocks, that can really establish the entire sprint. That can really establish each and every phase. But if we have poor mechanics out of the blocks and we stand up right away, well, now all of those phases are just thrown out the window and we're not actually going to be able to execute as quickly as we possibly can. So what is needed is we need that horizontal and we need that vertical force. We need rapid rates of coordination, and when we're coming out of the blocks, we need a ton of power. Our shin is going to be very steep, and we're gonna have a very deep angle in the knee and in the hips, and we have to have that dynamic trunk control. And so that brings us into those Olympic lifts. And when we're talking about those Olympic lifts, we've got to start to think about what are Olympic lifts, right? So if we can think about the traditional movements of a snatch, of a clean, of a jerk, now we can start to see, okay, those are the competitive movements. Now we can start to think, what are those variations of the Olympic lifts that we could potentially use? You know, power snatch, a power clean, a hang clean, maybe a behind the neck jerk. These are going to be considered variations. And I even put in variations that I refer to as reflexive Olympic lifts. So a movement that we might be able to utilize that's focused on the cross extensor reflex, or that's focused on the stumble reflex, that's going to force a training of a reflex in the human body that is also tends to be a skill. So these skills can get honed in on, and if they're trained in the weight room, they can actually help the athlete perform a little bit better on the track. And so understanding the competitive Olympic lifts, the variations of the Olympic lifts, and the reflexive Olympic lifts is going to be a key component behind laying out what are those top 4 key Olympic lifting variations that you can utilize to run faster. So coming in at that number 4 spot, we've got a power clean where we want to pause in the catch. And the reason why I really like to utilize a power clean with a pause in the catch for sprinting and sprint-based mechanics is because it forces that dynamic trunk control. And now one of the key factors, I see a lot of sprinters, they tend to just pull right off the floor and they won't make contact. And the problem with this is that they never actually achieve hip extension, okay? They never come through while their feet are flat-footed. They never really load their posterior chain really well, so they might even have their knees staying forward on the pull off the floor. Then they don't make contact and they just do almost like a muscle clean. I don't understand why elite sprint coaches aren't teaching these athletes to make contact. If you make contact with a power clean, you're going to utilize your hamstrings a little bit more effectively, and that's going to help you run more effectively. That's going to lead to better hip flexion when you're running at top end speed. Now, put in that pause in the catch. Now we got to pause in the catch and we have to absorb all that force. So that's going to train that dynamic trunk control. The more control we have with a large amount of weight, the more force absorption our body learns how to handle, and that's going to carry over to when we're running. If we have better dynamic trunk control, we're not going to be losing energy all over the place. Instead, we're going to be utilizing it in a linear fashion, and that's going to help us hawk down our opponents when we're running down the track. Now, when we talked about what those variations are, we talked about reflexive Olympic lifts. So coming in at that number 3 spot, we're gonna be utilizing a reflexive Olympic lift, okay? A dumbbell drop snatch to a box. And so what this movement is going to do, it's going to train your body how to absorb force, how to stay under control from a unilateral position, how to work through that cross extensor reflex, okay? How to hold that nice and tight, even how to train the stumble reflex as we move forward. And it's gonna help us generate a little bit more of that horizontal force in the weight room. So the big key here is that I wanna see if my left leg is up. I wanna drop a dumbbell from my left side. And then as we go to catch with our right side, so we're gonna absorb force, we're gonna load our hamstring. So as we go to catch, we're gonna almost be doing a ballistic movement here, a plyometric movement really, where we're gonna be catching, our hamstring's gonna be fully lengthened, and then as we bring our hips through, we're gonna project our body forward to a box. That box could be 12 to 18 inches. It could, 12 inches is perfectly fine. And if we're starting with, 20 to 25, 30 pound dumbbells, what's really cool with this movement is it trains and it helps your body learn how to utilize rapid rates of coordination with dynamic trunk control through a unilateral perspective while training reflexes. This is a reflexive Olympic lift. Dumbbell drop snatch to a box. I recommend doing 5 or 6 sets of this, 3 on each side. I even recommend doing this potentially as a warm-up with a very light band or with a very light dumbbell. This movement is absolutely phenomenal, and it can really help athletes learn that hip extension. It can help those athletes even learn how to absorb force with a flat foot, with that dorsiflex foot, and how to react rapidly with their hamstrings. Before I get further into the Olympic weightlifting for sprinting, if you need help with Olympic weightlifting and sports performance, and you need help understanding how different Olympic weightlifting variations can help with sports performance, click on the link down below. You can head over to garagestrength.com and you can pick up a free book, our free book of Olympic weightlifting and sports performance. You can pick that up today when you purchase our Olympic weightlifting and sports performance course. Coming at that number 2 spot, we've got a 2-box clean, okay? So 2-box clean. I established boxes are about 7 inches each. So this is gonna be about 14 inches off the ground. If you don't have boxes, it's okay if you utilize like a high hang clean, that's perfectly fine. The reason why I like to go with a 2-box is because I like sprinters, I like athletes to establish tension in the bar and get loaded in the bar without having that stretch shortening cycle from a hang. So when you do a hang clean, there's an eccentric loading, and it's gonna help your body be stronger with that concentric movement, whereas when you're going off the boxes, you're at a static start. And this is where I want our sprinters to think about. You're in the blocks, you can't really utilize an eccentric portion, otherwise you're gonna get called for a false start. We've gotta think about getting tension and holding tension and then igniting very, very rapidly. I like to utilize a 2-box clean. I actually want my athletes to go fully into the hole. I want full depth here. It's gonna help them be explosive very rapidly. They're gonna absorb a lot of force. They're gonna train their hips, their lower back to be a little bit more mobile, their upper back as well. And when they're in the bottom position, that's gonna train the strength that's gonna help them generate power out of the blocks. So not only is it that initial pull off of the boxes that's gonna help with their speed and their power development, their force development, but then catching, reutilizing that energy out of the bottom position is gonna help them generate power consistently. It's gonna help them become way more explosive off the start. I recommend utilizing 2 box cleans. You can do anywhere from 4 to 7 sets at 2 to 4 reps. Coming in at that #1 spot, this is a movement that I love to utilize. I love to utilize with my football players. I love to utilize with anyone who has to be fast. But there's a couple key components. It's the pause just below the knee power snatch. Now, here's a key factor. A lot of sprinters and a lot of sprint coaches don't teach anything about Olympic weightlifting technique. And the sad part is it's very easy. Sprinters are technical athletes. Sprinting is technical. To be a world-class sprinter, you have to be technically minded. Okay, these guys and these women have phenomenal sprinting technique. They don't look like football players, they look like sprinters, and that's why they're the best in the world, right? And so one of those key aspects is that when you come off the floor, when you're training a sprinter to come off of the floor, their knees should track back. Okay, the knees should clear back so that their shin angle is vertical. Now, when that happens, you're gonna have more hip flexion. The reason why I love to do this is because it lengthens the hamstring. If we can train the hamstring to hold that position isometrically, that's gonna transfer really well to the sprints. Now you hold it isometrically, 1, 2, 3. Here's the kicker. What I like to do is to cue on command. Okay, so they're holding it there just below the knee. And as a coach, now this is the time when you can start to utilize auditory signals to help them light up and help them be very explosive. And you can do this in other movement. But the reason why I love it with a pause below the knee power snatch is because the load tends to be light. They're gonna feel their hamstrings lengthened, and then they have to be patient, okay? You have to be patient when you're in the blocks. So then you can go 1, 2 as a coach, and they've gotta wait for you, and it's, now they have to go. Boom, they catch that power snatch. They bring it in, they make contact off the hips, they catch very rapidly overhead. And you can do this for 2 to 4 reps. I will recommend though, don't do it too frequently because it can tax the nervous system, because when you start to make things a little more competitive, everybody gets excited, right? So again, pull off the floor, clear those knees back, pause below the knee. 1, 2, give that auditory signal just like it's the start. Boom, now they light it up, they react very quickly. That's gonna help their reaction. That's gonna help their rapid rate of coordination. Those signals are gonna be firing to the brain and then back from the brain to the muscles to light it up and react quickly, and it's gonna help them be faster out of the blocks. Do pause below the knee with an auditory command power snatches. I would say once a week, 5 sets of 2 reps, that's perfectly fine, and you're gonna see that speed out of the blocks, and they're gonna be dominating down the track. So if you need help with your strength training for sprinting, you need to get faster, you need to react a little bit more effectively, you can click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com, and you can pick up your strength training for sprints-based programming. If you want more information about sprint-based training, you can click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.